My name is Joshua James. I'm the chair of the board of directors at North Carolina Immigration Law and Justice Center here in Fayetteville, formerly Justice for Our Neighbors. Our core mission as a law office is to provide low-cost consultations, $25, to help people assess their legal options within the immigration system. And then our attorney decides whether or not to take on a particular case. Sometimes we refer them out to other lawyers that are either also members of nonprofits or private attorneys sometimes. Some cases, like green card renewals, are very straightforward and don't take a lot of time. Some are more complex. Things like asylum especially can take months to years to resolve, requiring detailed guidance, and that's what we're here for. We have a very small team of paid employees, including our attorney, accountant, legal assistant, executive director, and grant writer. The rest of us are entirely volunteer, including myself and Genine here. So today I'm just going to address some very common questions about our work and try to shed light on the role that we play in our community. And I've mentioned before, I'm with Genine here, and I want you to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Genine, and I'm a student at Fayetteville State University. I'm going to graduate this week with my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. I'm interested in learning about social justice issues, especially in North Carolina, and so that's why I'm here to ask some questions and to learn more about what the North Carolina Immigration Law and Justice Center offers.
Great, okay. So we'll just jump right in if you want to start with the first question that you have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. James, for having me here.
Absolutely.
Does your office do anything beyond providing legal services?
We do. That's the flagship. That's what we focus the most on providing resources for. But we also, and this is in our mission statement, are committed to education and advocacy. So obviously we use social media for that, but we also speak in the community. We go to churches, to civic groups, schools as well, to talk to people just about immigration as a concept and immigration law, and also to advocate on behalf of the people that we represent. We do have a duty as an organization to speak out against the mistreatment of immigrants in society and policy. We generally do not, as a 501c3, discuss politicians themselves. They come and go. It's really the policy that they leave behind that often has the most impact on the people we serve.
Okay, then. Well, thank you for answering that. And when people hear North Carolina Immigration Law and Justice Center, they might think because of recent political events. If they are undocumented, does that make them criminals?
So we hear this a lot, the idea that if you're in the country without authorization by some route or another, that makes you a criminal. But we do not do criminal law. So our attorney does not go to a criminal court and there's no prosecution. It's not like what you would see on television. This is all civil law, which is very distinct from criminal law. The system itself, the court system, is a civil court system. Civil law in other cases would be things like property damage, intellectual property suits, but not things that deal with criminal law. They may have crossed the border without authorization. They may have been brought here as children, which is what a lot of DACA recipients are, or they may have just overstayed a travel visa or a study visa. The majority of undocumented people in the United States are actually undocumented because they overstayed a visa rather than crossed a border or anything like that. But it does not make a person a criminal to be undocumented. And we just work to find out what their options are within the legal system.
All right, I agree. So I know lately people are talking about the economy and how there are not enough resources in society to help all the problems that people in America experience. What about people who say that America is full? How can we afford to support more people?
So this is it. Yeah, this is where some sloganeering comes into play. One thing that I run our social media, so one thing that I've seen on Facebook more recently is this saying, it's cheaper to deport than support, which the idea of a country being full, it really oversimplifies the issue. The United States is a large country. We're actually experiencing a declining birth rate across the board, and immigration really is the one way to offset that, because otherwise you cannot force a generation of people to have more children. The only way really to offset this is through immigration. We don't really worry too much about things like population capacity. Certainly, I believe that increasing immigration to the United States might be one of our best hopes for a sustainable future. Otherwise, you won't have people paying into Social Security, or at least not as many people as you would need paying into Social Security, because immigrants pay income taxes just like we do, and contribute greatly that way, and of course pay sales taxes and everything else. So this is something that we're hearing not just in the United States, but in the United Kingdom as well. I know Ireland also has a rising nativist movement that is seeking, to kind of get this idea out there that Ireland is full, the United Kingdom is full. We can't accept more people. But again, this is also connected to the idea that people think that immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, are somehow entitled to benefits. That in some states they may be entitled to some benefits, but as far as federal benefits go, really there's just nothing there. So they contribute a great deal to the economy, but they actually don't really receive anything in the way of benefits. So technically, I think it would be much more expensive to deport even 1 million people than to support, which is really not even happening in the first place.
Okay, that's very interesting to learn, because, sometimes I hear people say that undocumented immigrants are like freeloaders in society, but that's surprising to learn that they don't really receive a lot of government benefits.
No, they're not really eligible for much of anything. I know in California they can get some SNAP benefits, but that's more through the state of California itself, I believe, rather than anything federal. So it's up to certain municipalities can do that, but there's no federal benefits.
All right. And so here's another question. Why don't all immigrants just come through the legal channel?
Yeah, and I've heard that a lot as well. Why didn't they just do it the right way? You'll even hear this from other people who have gone through the immigration process coming from other countries as well. I did it the right way. They should do it the right way as well. Really, there is no line. There's no way to jump the line because it does not exist. I saw somebody say that they should just knock on the door, which there's no front door to the United States. We do have ports of entry, which are the official places at which you would enter the United States. The issue with those, especially along the southern United States border, is that many of those are overwhelmed in the first place. There aren't that many of them. They may not be well staffed. And so that forces people to wait in Mexico. There was a policy under the previous administration called, was the Migrant Protection Protocol, but it was colloquially called the Remain in Mexico policy. And that's exactly what it sought to do. It sought to have people, especially asylum seekers, wait in Mexico, in Ciudad Juarez or other places where they can't necessarily get a job. And so they're waiting for months and months with their families, their children. And that puts them in great danger as well, because they are targets for criminals throughout Mexico also, as they are trying to reach the border. So I do have, it's like telling someone in a burning house to be patient. The sense of urgency and danger that drives people here to then tell them to wait months, or even years within sight of the United States it's really unreasonable to ask people to wait that long. And people have the right to seek asylum on U.S. soil. So If someone crosses the border without authorization, that is still a crime under statutes. But once they are on the other side, oftentimes what they do is immediately find Border Patrol agents, turn themselves in to begin the asylum process. So it doesn't matter how you got here. If you begin the asylum process, you have the right to do that. So yeah, there's no front door. Now, could we take a lot of the energy and funding that we are planning on putting towards other things and put it towards hiring more people to staff ports of entry, opening more ports of entry? I think we can do just about anything. This is the United States. It's just a matter of political will. Yeah.
All right, that's interesting. Are immigrants bringing crime, drugs, and danger into our communities?
So this is with fentanyl and, of course, human trafficking and things like that, which are very real problems. That's what a lot of people think of, or it seemed to default to when they think about immigrants, especially along the southern border. Rarely do we ever talk about the Canadian border. But undocumented individuals are here undocumented, so the last thing that they're going to want to do is run afoul of the law. Because if they are arrested and it's found that they are undocumented, then they're probably going into deportation proceedings.
Yes.
So, studies have shown again and again that immigrants generally commit crimes at a much lower rate than native-born citizens. And the problem, too, is that the drug trafficking, this is cartels, notoriously, in Mexico, and they are doing this to fulfill a market that is here in the United States for illicit drugs. If there were no market for it, they would not be trafficking those things here. It's not as though drug traffickers are coming through and going up to people and forcing this on them. People have addictions. They want these things. And so it goes both ways. There are suppliers because there is a demand, and that demand is in the United States. And a lot of the time, the people of Mexico and migrants suffer because of the violence that's associated with this.
Okay. Especially, living in Texas.
Okay.
I'm from Texas. I always hear about the border and violence.
Right.
So thank you for that answer. So I know that people might be looking at your social media page and see your different posts about immigrants and about different issues affecting people of color, people from around the world that come here. What do you say to people who think that North Carolina, your organization, the North Carolina Justice Center, prioritizes immigrants over Americans?
We've heard that as well, from arguments about we need to take care of our veterans first, or we need to take care of the homeless first before we do this. And that assumes that we can't do more than one thing at a time. Certainly us providing legal services to people who oftentimes want to become Americans does not take anything away from American citizens themselves. Most of our clients are people with families who are already here contributing to our communities. So we're just trying to find ways to help them through the process and oftentimes become naturalized citizens of the United States. Can be a long process, but for a lot of people, that's the goal. And generally, we believe that whatever is good for the people who live in our community, immigrant or not, is good for us as well. If they live more securely and feel more able to just go out and be in the community and be more engaged. If you're undocumented, it can be iffy to even pick up your children from school. Just to leave the house is often a very risky thing to do. And so that limits how people contribute to the communities in which we live. The idea that I saw someone one time said, why aren't you providing attorneys for Americans? You do get a attorney assigned to you if you want to, if you're going through the criminal justice system. It's just we are fulfilling a need in one specific area, but Fayetteville itself has a couple of great organizations that help people experiencing homelessness, food insecurity, and more often than not, we ally ourselves with them and work with them. We support their events and try to amplify when they have particular needs for fundraising or supplies. And they do the same for us because in many ways, we just want our community to be a better place, regardless of the issues or difficulties someone's facing.
All right, so it sounds like you guys are just regular people who want to stand up for the different issues that some people who are immigrants experience. And thank you for serving a population that really needs it. Are you guys funded by taxpayers?
Seen that several times too. So we could be. There are federal grants for nonprofits. The application process for those that would be a lot to put our grant writer through. It's very tedious and detailed. So we've never applied for any of those. We're a 501c3. Our 990 forms are available on the IRS website. I've seen people in our social media comments asking, kind of in a sinister manner, who's funding you, or why are you using my tax dollars for this? And private donations and grants. And grants are when an organization, usually a charity or a company, give us a specific amount of money, usually for a specific reason, either for payroll or to host an event. But those are entirely the two ways that we're funded. We do have a small staff that we pay. We only have one full-time employee, and that's our executive director. But yeah, there's no taxpayer money being spent at the North Carolina Immigration Law and Justice Center. Okay,
well, that's really interesting to know. Let's go start to the beginning. Mm-hmm. How did the North Carolina Immigration Law and Justice Center start?
So this project, it goes back really to the end of the Second World War, when you have a refugee crisis really on the level that we hadn't seen, certainly worldwide before. And we've seen close to in the time since then. And so the United Methodist Church founded an organization that eventually evolved into what's now called the Immigration Law and Justice Network, of which we are one of 19 sites across the United States. Now, we've gone through name changes. That's what we're called now. Prior to this, we were called Justice for Our Neighbors. We changed our name to better describe just the work that we do. So Scott Foster, who I have known for several years now, in October 2018, he started to try to gauge interest in having a clinic here in Fayetteville. There had been one in North Carolina before, located in Charlotte. Now, I can't remember how long ago that was. It didn't stick. It didn't last very long. So we're the second attempt, and I'm really honored that they chose Fayetteville. We're not the biggest city, but we are the most diverse by far. And it was interesting because this all coincided with a project that I was running downtown at the Greyhound station, where we were meeting asylum seekers as they were passing through our city on the way to their sponsors in New York, New Jersey, just farther north. They would stop over in Fayetteville, which is on I-95, and when they were released from federal custody at the border from detention, generally they were released without any of the supplies they had come with, any of the clothing, medicine, food, even things like rosaries and Bibles were often taken by federal officials and never returned. And so we would meet buses 3 times a day at the Greyhound station and provide supplies. And as that project started to slow down due to changes in policy at the border more than anything, I met Scott, who was the pastor at St. Andrew's United Methodist Church at that time, and said, however I can support the opening of this office, let me know. And so those two efforts kind of meshed together. As we finished our project, many of our members from the Migrant Project became board members here at the Justice Center. Lisa Lofthouse, Brenda Bautista were early members. Oscar Hernandez was the executive director. And St. Andrews provided major support for our first few years because we opened in November 2020 in really the height of the pandemic. And so we needed, and we're still recovering from that just as far as publicity and getting our name out there goes, because we couldn't really hold events. Now, I became board chair in October of last year, at the same time that Viviana Quiles became the executive director. So we've worked together for about a year now, and we have great hope of just expanding the organization. We've been kind of in rebuilding mode over the last year, but there are a lot of opportunities coming up for us in the near future. And while we realize that 2025 is going to be very difficult, more difficult than we really anticipated, we feel like we're in a strong enough position to meet that. Yeah, that's the long story of our founding.
Well, I am very glad that you guys exist as a vital resource for North Carolina's immigrant communities. One last final question. What's one thing you want people to know about your organization above all else?
So, as I said, we have a very good partnership with the United Methodist Church. Our office is in a former parsonage of Victory United Methodist Church here in Fayetteville. And some of us are religious, some of us are not, but the Bible, especially the Old Testament, and this I can't remember how many times, but it commands us to love the stranger more frequently than it does to love our neighbors, by several fold. And really, we think these are the same thing. Loving your neighbor, loving the stranger should really be considered the same thing, because most of the immigrants who live in our communities, even if they're undocumented, they've been here 5, 10, 15 or more years and have built lives. Their children go to school here. A lot of the time their children are citizens because they were born here. And we want them to be able to live life as openly and fully as we have as American citizens. And many of us on the board have immigration in our background. We have personal connections to these stories, and we just hope that in the coming year and beyond, that more people will join us, regardless of their background or creed, nationality, anything. We are a very diverse organization, and what keeps us focused and what keeps us together is serving this population.
It sounds like it's a really positive thing that you guys are doing. Different people of different backgrounds and faiths coming together to help North Carolina's immigrant communities. I want to thank you so much for explaining about this organization to me and the many people who are listening to this podcast. Your time is greatly appreciated, and I wish the organization the best.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about it.
Thank you.
All right.